Hello, I'm back with my second installment of Read Your Own Stories Out Loud. This time I'm going to be doing One Wet Dog, which is also a true story, although I compressed the timeline a little bit. This first appeared in one of these two books, Happy Endings, Heartwarming Stories of Animal Rescues. I had a couple stories published in these, edited by Bonnie Marluski-Probert. And now it can be found in this book, The Snow Deer and Other Stories, which is a collection of all my own stories, not a collection of a whole bunch of people's stories. This story, One Wet Dog, is probably the best received of the short stories that I've had published. So without further ado, I shall read it. One Wet Dog. One dry dog, $6.95. I stood in the grocery store parking lot with the shopping cart butted up against the fender, staring blankly at those words on my receipt. My gaze passed over the groceries, the boxes and bags, until finally recognition dawned. In the cart was a small bag of Purina One dry dog chow. One dry dog, $6.95. I kept that receipt, and over the years it became a kind of mantra, repeated lovingly, as I fetched a bowl of fresh water or ran a towel over rain-soaked fur. Eventually it became a nickname, a private joke. It was the best thing a dog could be. Special, warm, safe and dry. One dry dog. A Saturday night in April, coastal California. I'm running late to close the gate at a recreation site for which I'm responsible. I'm a park ranger, and besides closing gates, I do law enforcement, emergency medical, and search and rescue. The site is supposed to be closed at 6. It's 7:30 when I roll into the parking lot. Despite the large sign with the hours posted on it, there is still a white sedan in the lot. Now I have to find the car's occupants and either chase them out, or, if there's a reason for their tardiness, help them out. I'm not happy about it. It's been a stressful week, it's my Friday, and I want to go home. Starting my week out, a car, traveling too fast to negotiate a hairpin curve, ran off a steep mountain road and crashed in the canyon below. Both of the occupants were killed on impact. There was nothing we could do except call the county search and rescue team to fish their bodies out and haul them up the hill. As the car came slowly back up the embankment, attached to a steel cable on a winch, I realized that it looked familiar and checked the license plate against our local file. I'd given them a ticket for speeding in the park just a few days before, as well as a lecture regarding the dire consequences of excess speed on wet, narrow country roads. Apparently, I'd failed to make an impact. Now I'm both physically and mentally exhausted. Closing the gate is my last duty before a 3-day weekend. As I swing my truck around to park in the lot, my headlights sweep up the canyon and I see them. They are coming around the first bend in the trail towards the parking lot, 4 college-age kids strolling casually. Maybe I'll get out of here quickly after all. I roll down my window and pull up near them. "Hi, is that your white car with the Florida plates?" "Yeah, it's mine," one of them replies with a concerned tone. Maybe he thinks it's been damaged or something. "It's 7:30. No response. The park closed at 6. There's shoulder punching, some shoving. "I thought it closed at dark. Are we in trouble?" After the week I've just finished, staying late in the park seems minor, and I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with anything right now. I want to go home. "Forget it. Anybody else still up in there?" "No, but... There was this dog back there. She looked like she was injured." "Great. I'm a sucker for dogs." "It was a chow mix or Eskimo dog, something like that. Furry, friendly. She seemed like she was waiting for us near the falls when we came back." "She was still there when you left?" "Yeah, she was still there." "Okay, I'll check it out. You guys go ahead and get out of here." "We're going." I try my radio to let my dispatch know I'll be going up the canyon, but with no luck. The steep canyon walls block my signal. I put the Bronco in 4-wheel drive and jounce up the old road bed. now a hiking trail. There's a ruin a mile and a half up the canyon where the terrain rises steeply to become cliffs and bluffs. I park on the old terrace and get out with my flashlight. Perhaps I'll see the dog right away, or she'll come to me. There's a little waterfall where the trail crosses the creek. I walk down that way to check. No dog. "Here, puppy," I call, directing the flashlight beam around the ruin. Maybe it picked itself up and went home. And maybe those kids were talking about the larger waterfall, 500 yards up the creek, not the small fall at the trail crossing. I squint up the cascading water swollen from recent rains. I know I'll never forgive myself if I don't check. I lock up the truck and start up the creek bed, hopping from rock to sandbar in the dark. I call for the dog in a coaxing tone, but I doubt I can be heard over the rush of water. Once in a while, I swing the light around, hoping to bounce the beam off the dog's eyes. Eventually, I reach the base of the waterfall. It is as full as I've ever seen it, the moonlight changing it to something otherworldly. Turning, I see the ghostly white of my truck in the clearing below. Between the falls and the clearing, it is dark and enclosed. I'm about to retreat when I see her head poking up from behind a boulder. As the flashlight beam hits her, she ducks, ears flicking up and down in a confusion of fear and hope. She's curled in a pocket of gravel at the base of the falls, and even from where I stand, I can see that she holds one back leg out and away from her. I approach over the rocks, trying to keep my light on her, and climb through the jumble at the same time. In a minute I'm there, but she doesn't move to rise and greet me like a dog normally does. I take the light off her so she can see me and offer a hand. She lays back her ears apprehensively. Afraid, I think, and thus dangerous. She allows me to pat her on the head, but I can see the whites of her eyes. I play the light over her thickly furred body down to the injured leg. It's bloodied, possibly a partial amputation of the paw. Did she slip and fall down the waterfall from above? No collar that I can see, although I'm not going to grope under an unfriendly chin. I know one thing without question. She can never make it down that boulder-strewn creek bed on her own. If I want to get her out of here, I'm going to have to carry her. Still no radio contact, no help available. I can't leave her. She might not survive until I return. The only humane option is to grab her and proceed carefully back down the cascade. Her teeth would be up around my face, though, I realize, and in her fear and pain, she might bite the hand that sought to help her. To be on the safe side, I unlace my hiking boot. I double the lace, drape it over her muzzle, and stick the ends through the loop, pulling it snug under her chin. Then I tie the ends behind her ears. She looks up at me reproachfully. I assuage myself with the idea that I'm rescuing her, and it would do no good to have the rescuer injured as well as the victim. That accomplished, I realize that I'm going to have both hands full and won't be able to use my flashlight. Now, not only will I be carrying her down a steep, rocky creek over car-sized boulders with no hands to steady myself and only one boot firmly attached, I'll also be doing it in the dark. I turn the flashlight off and stick it down the back of my duty belt. I squat down and feel her ribs and abdomen, trying to remember the correct way to lift a dog. She flops over on one side, as if expecting me to rub her belly. Her original fear of me seems to have fled. I give her a reassuring pat. I work my arm around her body and my hand under her chest. As I try to rise, I encounter another problem. I'm already encumbered with body armor and gun belt, and the dog weighs a good 75 pounds. It takes everything I have just to get to my feet. She leans her head trustingly against my shoulder. I stagger my first few steps and go down, my unsupported ankle failing, no arms to break my fall. I twist to let my body armor take the brunt of it, cushioning me from the rocks. I grip the dog to my chest. "Sorry, baby," I gasp. Despite what must have been a painful fall, she never makes a move to break free. I begin to wonder if her eerie calm is the result of shock, if she is suffering from internal injuries and slipping further towards death with each passing moment. I get one knee up and struggle to my feet again. Another few steps and I'm faced with a steep, sloping boulder. I lean against it and half roll, half slide to its base. My knees collapse and I crumble in a heap. Every muscle in my biceps and shoulders stretches and strains. I look down at the dog. She rolls her head back to look up at me, eyes pools of blackness in the shadowy dark. It's like looking into the blackness of space. I see infinity there, the infinity of death. I'm not going to leave you, baby, I speak back into her eyes. I'll get you out of here one way or another. I look down to where I can see the faint white glow of my vehicle, Salvation. I press up, getting to my feet once again. I can barely keep my grasp on her, my fingers digging into her thick fur for a handhold. She seems to grow larger with every step. I worry that I'm making things worse by squeezing her, crushing her ribs with her mouth tied shut. She doesn't struggle or whine. I hope, trying to convince myself that it means she understands I'm trying to help her. I look down at her broad face and realize that the shoelace has come off and disappeared, sacrificed unnecessarily. I move deliberately now over rocks I cannot see, bumping my boot toes against them to discover their shape and size. Eventually, I must cross the creek. I hoist the dog higher. She flails briefly, but I grip her tight. Here we go, baby. I take a step into the creek and pitch forward into the cold water. It's much deeper than I'd expected. I lurch desperately, trying not to drop her. My shin scrapes against some object, and I feel the skin peel off the front of my leg, the sting of the water as it contacts my flesh. I refuse to drop the dog. With every ounce of my strength, I throw myself forward and hit the opposite shore of the creek. The dog lies atop me like the weight of the world, water streaming from her, one wet dog, cold and injured and afraid. I realize that my boot has come off completely. My strength is all but gone, but she has become my redemption there in the dark, the symbol of all those I've failed to save in the past. She will, at least, not die there in the dark alone. I squat once more by my dog and gather her up. After several tries, I gain my feet and make the several yards to the stone wall that once divided civilization from wilderness. I cross the wall by sitting on it and moving my legs from one side to the other, then make a final charge down the walkway to my truck, the tortuous last few feet around the back bumper to the passenger side. Grimacing from the pain in my shin and foot, I set the dog down and grope for my keys, unlock the door, and lean helplessly, unable to contemplate for the moment, lifting her to set her inside. But eventually that too is accomplished. She curls into the bucket seat neatly. I walk slowly back up along the wall by myself to retrieve my boot, which bobs laceless in an eddy. It has taken me nearly an hour. It takes another half hour to get to the animal shelter. It takes a half hour more to rouse a shelter employee to meet us there. He arrives cheery and clean, pronounces the dog a Norwegian elkhound, and after surveying her smelly and sopping fur, suggests that I put her in his truck so he can transport her to pet emergency. I wrap my arms around her once more and carry her to the truck box. She sits on the rubber mat, alert and dignified. The shelter employee checks her gums quickly and tells me she doesn't appear to be in shock. Once again, she and I make eye contact. The man closes the door, the vision is cut off, and I stand there with my strained muscles and my wet pants and my bruised shin. I wonder suddenly if she has been calm throughout this ordeal because she trusted me all along to save her. As I drive home with the odor of wet fur around me, I remind myself that my responsibility is finished. I did not fail to save her, as I have failed to save others from their own stupidity or from the forces of nature. But I feel unfulfilled, as if, having done what I intended, I have not yet done enough. On Monday, I drop by the pound. She is alive and well and hasn't been claimed. I walk through the rows of animalia until I find her pen. Her leg is encased in a thick bandage. It isn't badly injured, they tell me. They're surprised she let me carry her, that she didn't just jump out of my arms and hop down the rocks on her 3 good, strong legs. I'm surprised, too. I wonder which one of us was the victim that night and which was the rescuer. Tonight, she sits near the glass doors in my living room, her black eyes mirroring the night beyond. It seems that something passes between us unspoken, a flash of a moonlit night, rushing water, and dark boulders. I sense something deeper, an understanding of how each of us in our lives are both rescued and rescuer. But perhaps what I see in her eyes is just the knowledge that she is tonight one dry dog.